Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It's a slightly drizzly day here in suburban Chicago, even though it has already started to rain. It's just a very light sort of sprinkling rain. And this is the time I have to go for a walk, so I'm going for a walk. I don't even think the rain is coming down hard enough that you could hear it if I had an umbrella, but I didn't bring an umbrella because it's just very light. So we'll see how it goes. The clouds are a kind of slate gray across the sky. You can see a little texture in them, but not much. I put on a hoodie so that my glasses wouldn't get wet. My hair I don't care so much about, but my glasses get wet. It gets hard to see, so I'm wearing a hoodie. All right, well, today I thought I would talk about something that sort of happened over the weekend in terms of my gaming and sort of reflect on it with you. Over the weekend, I noticed that my spreadsheet that I use to keep track of where games go had an awful lot of handwritten notes on it. Let me explain a little bit about how my games are stored in my process. So basically, I'm going to be talking today a little bit about how my collection is stored and then talk a little bit about when do you decide to keep a game, when do you decide to get rid of it. So, my collection is in our basement in a set of Kallax shelves, along with there is a table that we call the side table that has a big pile of games on it. That's how the games are shelved in our basement. I realized a long time ago, 4 years ago I guess, that the Kallax shelves could hold more than 4 games. Generally they can hold like 4 full-size Ticket to Ride size games in the cube. Sometimes it could be a little more, sometimes it could be a less. If you're willing to kind of stack and Tetris the games in there, you can often get more in there. But depending on game size and whatever, it's generally about 4. However, the cubes are 14 inches deep, meaning that if you slide the games all the way to the back of the cube, you have about a 3-inch space in front of the games. So, in order to save space, one of the things I started doing is picking out games that I like the way they look and that store okay on standing up. And I would put those games in the front of each cube. So when you look at my game collection in my basement, the cubes are all full. They all have a game in the front, and then behind them are the other games. Now, this looks really nice. The downside of that, though, is that it doesn't make it easy to browse the games because every single cube has 4 or 5 or 6 sometimes games in it, and then another game in front of those that makes it harder to see the games in the back. So the solution to that I have found is to keep a spreadsheet in my computer of all the games that I have and where they are in the collection. The spreadsheet makes it very easy to find games individually because the spreadsheet is kept in alphabetical order and it lists where in the collection the game is. So it makes it pretty easy to find a game if I don't remember offhand which cube it's in. And if it's a game I haven't played in a while, that's really useful. It also helps a lot when I'm cleaning up and putting away because I don't have to decide where to put the game each time. I can just look at the spreadsheet and see where it goes. Of course, the downside to using a physical piece of paper, one, you could lose it, although I'm pretty careful about putting it back where I keep it. The second thing is that if I need to make a change to it, either you have to print out a new copy or write on it. And I sort of split the difference on that. Generally what I do is if I need to make a change, I will note the change on the spreadsheet, the printout of the spreadsheet with a pencil. And then once the spreadsheet seems like it's got a lot of changes on it, then I will go back to my computer and update it. I find that kind of organizational task pretty mentally fun and soothing. So that's a nice way to spend my time. It also does beg the bigger question though, which is how do you let people who are new peruse your game collection then to see if something they want to play. And the solution I've done to this is, again, kind of feeds into my interest or desire in organizing things. And this is, I made a set of cards about the size of Magic cards. They're a little smaller, but about that size, that display the games in my collection. They have a picture of the box of the game on it. They have the name of the game as well as the Board Game Geek tagline. You know, when you go on to Board Game Geek and you look up a game, there's like a 80 character tagline underneath each game. I've grabbed those and then it says like how many people it plays, how long it goes, and what kind of game it is. I categorize the games by the sort of most significant aspect of them. Some of them it's player count, so I categorize this games as 2-player, or game length, so there's filler. Then I have family/light game, medium game, heavy game, cooperative game, novelty game. I put those in the category of like, if we want to play a game because it's goofy to play it rather than because it's like a good game, I have those in my novelty category. So I have this like binder of cards, and that takes a lot of time to reorganize, and I did do that last weekend or 2 weekends ago. I did reorganize that. One thing I found is that I'd missed some stuff in my spreadsheet, so and on BoardGameGeek. So I had a handful of games that I got rid of, and my actual collection size went down. I'll talk about that in a couple days when we do our top of the stack. But actually, now that I think about it, this episode will come out after the top of the stack episode. So I talked about that when I did my top of the stack. But it does sort of beg the question, as I'm doing this, I realize like, man, my collection is too big. You know, on one hand, I love having lots of games. I love having lots of choices. But the reality is a lot of the games I have they're not getting played. They're just taking up space. And when I get new games, I don't have any room for them. And as a result, I have a lot of games I'm just keeping in a kind of pile on this side table, which I don't particularly like. Right now, this pile is like 2 games deep. So there's some games that you literally have to move a stack of games in order to see it. And that's too much, I think. So some culling is in order, which I haven't done a big cull in a while. I usually try to do one each year for the game sale that they do at Fair Game, but I'm thinking I might do a cull ahead of time and try to sell some games on BoardGameGeek or on Facebook Marketplace. I guess I could use Craigslist as well. I like to do local pickup. You lose so much of the value of a game in shipping. Either you have to price it lower so people are willing to pay for shipping, or you price it higher and no one wants to buy it. So I just do local pickup is my preference. But so it did sort of beg the question of, if I'm going to go through my collection, how do I decide what to get rid of? And then should I, get rid of those? So all of that is kind of whirling around in my mind. And then yesterday I played a game of Nexus Ops, which is a very fighty game. It is a very fighty game. It is just a game of quick combat tactics, trying to read the other players, trying to outmaneuver them. There's quite a bit of luck in it. And it is a fun game for what it is. I can see why people like it. In playing it, I can see why I kept it as long as I did. The potential, the feeling of the potential of it is there. But ultimately, after playing it again, I'm like, if I never play this again, I won't feel bad. So it's silly to keep it. And I actually offered it to the person I played it with who really did like it, and they're like, sure. So that one's leaving the collection. It's great. And it'll go to people who will play it, which is even better. But it sort of does beg the question then of what kind of filters do I use when I'm deciding what games to keep in my collection, which I thought I would talk about today. If you go to the show notes for today's episode, you'll find links to 3 or 4, I don't remember exactly, but 3 or 4 different episodes I've done in previous seasons where I talk about either what games I'm getting rid of or how do I organize my collection or culling the collection. In particular, there's an episode 260 something, so about 4 years ago, where I talk about doing this initial organization. So if you want to listen to other episodes of me talking about this and perhaps repeating myself, I'll admit I did not go back and listen to those again. But I thought today I would talk a little bit about what are the factors that make me decide to keep a game or get rid of a game, and how have those factors influenced my decisions recently. So, and this gives me a chance to sort of out loud think through, how am I going to filter my collection going forward? When I do my big cull, how am I going to decide what to keep or not? So the first one of the first factors that decides whether I should keep a game or not is, have I played it? I generally do not like to get rid of a game that I've never played. And as a result, as you know from my survey of the Shelf of Opportunity from a couple weeks ago, I have a bunch of games that I am interested in playing, but haven't had a ton of motivation to play, or it's hard to get to the table. And I suspect they won't last to a second play. I'll play them once and be like, okay, that was an interesting experience. Out the door you go. So it is kind of weird that I keep them if I think, this probably isn't going to be a game that I'll like. But the interest of new games, the novelty of trying a game I've never played before, outweighs almost anything else in my collection. Not entirely, I love playing games that I love, but I like trying new games. I really like it. So my guess is it's very rare that I'm going to get rid of a game that I own without playing it. That said, my love of playing some games is probably the first filter. Like, is this a game I love? If it's been in my top 50, I probably am not going to get rid of it. But there might be some times, ever. Let's not talk about the top 50 I owe you from 6 months ago. Maybe I'll just at this point wait until December and do a new top 50 in December. But the fact that some games I find fun every time I play them and they're weird or interesting or just really compelling means that there are some games I can't imagine getting rid of anytime soon, or at all, maybe. These might, so I think of these as always play games. Games that I love to play, I will happily play anytime someone asks to. Some of the top ones are the games that my wife and I like. Wingspan, I can't imagine getting rid of Wingspan. We always have a great time playing it. Sagrada, we always have a great time playing Sagrada. London, the Martin Wallace game, we have a great time playing that. So, some of these games that I've played dozens of times on the table are games that I definitely will not get rid of. The second factor, particularly they're never really on the table to get rid of, right? I'm not thinking about getting rid of them. The second category is something that I probably am thinking about getting rid of more, and these are games that I have because I collect that designer. The two sort of biggest groups of games that I have that I own because I collect that designer are Martin Wallace and Vladimir Suchý. Both Martin Wallace and Vladimir Suchý have games they've made that I bought because they're games made by that person, and I've played them once. I don't have any Vladimir Suchý games I haven't played. I do have a couple Martin Wallace games I haven't played, and I keep them because they are by that designer. The Vladimir Suchý ones, especially League of Six, 20th Century, these are actually pretty good games. They're fun. I don't have a lot of drive to play them, but I'm not going to get rid of them because they are part of my Vladimir Suchý collection. Martin Wallace, I'm a little more flexible on, just because he produces so many games. But a lot of the games that I have of his that I sort of hesitate to get rid of would be very hard to replace if I decided I wanted to get them again. And frankly, they're not in huge demand. So getting rid of them would just be about reducing the number of games in my collection. And while that is a motivation, and then the other category of games that I'm less likely to get rid of are games that I have in my collection because they're in my collection as a collection rather than as a library. By which I mean games that I own for their novelty's sake rather than because I want to play them. One example of that kind of game would be the Columbo board game. I don't particularly like the Columbo detective game. I don't think it's particularly interesting as a mystery game, nor is it particularly fun. But I love having a game that's themed around Columbo. And as long as I have the space to keep it, it's gonna stay because it's an interesting novelty. The same is true of the Murder, She Wrote game. So I have some games that are in my collection because of that novelty aspect, and I don't see them leaving. So what are some of the factors that would make me get rid of a game? And here I'll use some examples of games that I have gotten rid of or am getting rid of or am thinking about getting rid of that fit this category. The first one is it's widely available. So if I have a game and I'm not like super into it and it's very widely available, I think it's reasonable to get rid of it because it's not hard to get a hold of if I want to. So for instance, let's say that I really like Splendor or Wingspan. Like Wingspan would be an example of a game I could get rid of because I know it's widely available, and if I want to play it again, I can. Alternately, that actually is a bigger factor for why I might not buy a game to begin with. I mentioned in a previous episode that I didn't buy Voidfall, in part because I knew at least one friend who was buying it, and it turns out I have 2 or 3 different friends who have it, so I don't really need to have it in my collection. Would it be fun to have? Sure. But that's true of every game I encounter that I don't just absolutely hate. So it being widely available would be one of the reasons I might be willing to get rid of a game. And in fact, have done so in the past, right? That I had, for a while I didn't have Catan in my collection because my school board game club at school did not have Catan. So I gave my copy to the school board game club because then I wanted them to have a copy of Catan and I knew if I want to play Catan, it's easy to get a hold of. The same goes for a lot of the games that I've given to my board game club, although there, as often it's because I found a copy at Goodwill. Or sometimes I'll give the copy I have to the game club, and then I'll find another copy at Goodwill and replace. That's why the copy of Settlers of Catan that I have right now is in fact a copy I got at Goodwill, because it's fun to have. Every now and again you want to play it, and it's nice to have it on hand, but it's easy to get a hold of, so I was willing to get rid of it. So the two biggest factors of why a game would get removed from my collection then would be that I don't like it, or it never gets played. Games I don't like, obviously I should get rid of them. The reality is, because I'm an Omni gamer, there's a lot of games that I play and I'm like, yeah, it was fun, it was fine. A game being fine, it's harder to, it's a little harder. Like I could see the potential in it. Maybe if I played it again with the right people, it would be great. And then I'd feel bad for even having gotten rid of it. That's often the place I find myself when I am getting rid of games. It was fine, or even it was kind of fun, but is it just, maybe it's not fun enough to grab my attention? And that's the never gets played and not quite fun enough are the things that go together. I'd say the biggest example of a game that I'm getting rid of because it never gets played is Bunny Kingdom. I like Bunny Kingdom a lot. I think it's really cool. Every time I suggest playing it, the people around me are like, nah. I brought it to my game club a couple times. People haven't played. Now, if I said, I want to play Bunny Kingdom, and I get it on the table, then people will play it. But if I have it as a list of games we might play, no one ever picks it. And the same goes for At Home. It never gets played. And so while I like it, obviously I don't like it enough to say, I really want to play this today. And so it occurs to me it's a game that would be better in someone else's collection. The other one is maybe it's a game I've grown out of. The Nexus Ops games that I mentioned would be an example of that. But part of the filter has to be, is this going to get played? A lot of the games that I've gotten rid of in the past are games that I like, and I just realized it's not getting played. It's probably not going to get played. I should make room for other games in my collection. And so then that game goes out the window or goes onto the sell pile. I think the biggest factor for me right now is I really should make an effort to play more of the games I haven't played so I can decide, do they stay or do they go? If they stay, what's going instead? I've never been one to say I have to have a firm one in, one out policy, but people who can hold themselves to that, they keep a reasonable collection. My collection's outrageously big. I could play a different game every day and it would be almost 2 years before I repeated a game. That's too much, I think. At the same time, it's really fun, and why hamper myself? Those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum there. So that's the situation I'm in with the games I've got, and the thoughts that I have as I'm moving forward toward a big cull. Which does lead me to the question for you: what makes you keep a game? What makes you get rid of a game? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and look for the thread that I'm going to start about this week's episodes, and let me know what you think of these questions. I'd be happy to hear how you decide which games to keep and what makes a game get above the cut for you. Again, you can join me over on Board Game Geek in Guild 3269. You could also send me a Board Game Geek message. Wombat929 is my username there. You can send me an email, brendan@rattleboxgames.com. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.